A lonely highway, a desperate golden retriever refusing to move, and a truck driver whose routine delivery run is about to become the most heart-stopping moment of his life. What he discovers when he finally stops will shake you to your core. This isn't just a story about a dog on the road. It's about loyalty so fierce it defies death itself, a bond so powerful it brings a hardened man to his knees, and a truth so devastating it will change everything you think you know about courage. Before we begin, if stories like this touch your heart, please hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below. Your support helps us share more incredible tales of hope and heroism. Now, let's dive into this unbelievable true story. The sun hung low over Interstate 40, casting long shadows across the asphalt as Jake Morrison shifted gears in his 18-wheeler. The veteran truck driver had been on this route for 15 years, hauling freight between Tennessee and Texas. He knew every mile marker, every rest stop, every dangerous curve. But nothing in his years of cross-country hauling had prepared him for what he was about to encounter on this ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The radio crackled with classic country music as Jake drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, his eyes scanning the empty highway ahead. Traffic was light, which was unusual for this time of day. The late afternoon sun painted the road in shades of amber and gold, and for a moment, everything seemed peaceful, predictable, safe. Then he saw it. At first, it was just a golden blur in the distance, barely distinguishable from the sun-bleached pavement. Jake squinted, leaning forward slightly. As his truck rumbled closer, the blur took shape. A dog, a golden retriever, standing directly in the middle of the right lane, completely still, facing oncoming traffic. What the hell? Jake muttered, instinctively easing off the accelerator. The dog didn't move. It stood there like a statue, its golden fur rippling slightly in the wind created by passing vehicles. Cars swerved around it, horns blaring, drivers cursing as they narrowly avoided collision. But the retriever remained frozen, planted firmly in the center of the lane. Jake's heart rate picked up. He'd seen plenty of strange things on the road over the years. Deer frozen in headlights, livestock that had escaped from farms, even an occasional confused driver going the wrong way. But this was different. This dog wasn't panicked or confused. It was deliberate, purposeful, as if it was waiting for something. Or someone. He downshifted, the massive truck's engine groaning as it slowed. His gut told him to stop, but his schedule screamed at him to keep moving. He had a delivery deadline in Dallas, and he was already running behind. But something about the dog's posture, the way it stood so resolutely despite the danger, made it impossible to drive past. "This is going to cost me," he grumbled, pulling the truck onto the shoulder about 50 yards ahead of the dog. Jake grabbed his orange safety vest from behind the seat and climbed down from the cab. The heat hit him immediately, the Texas sun unforgiving even this late in the day. He pulled on the vest and started walking back toward the animal, one hand raised to slow the oncoming traffic. As he got closer, details emerged that made his chest tighten. The golden retriever was in rough shape. Its fur, which had been lustrous and well-groomed, was matted and dirty. Ribs were visible beneath the golden coat, suggesting days or even weeks without proper food. But what struck Jake most were the dog's eyes. They weren't wild or frightened. They were focused, locked onto the shoulder of the highway with an intensity that was almost human. "Hey there, buddy," Jake called out softly, approaching slowly. "You trying to get yourself killed out here?" The dog's ears flicked toward his voice, acknowledging his presence, but it didn't turn its head. It didn't budge an inch. Jake moved carefully, aware that a frightened or aggressive dog was dangerous, especially in the middle of a busy highway. But as he came alongside the retriever, he realized with a shock that the dog wasn't aggressive at all. It was crying, not barking or whimpering in fear, but producing a low, mournful sound that seemed to come from the depths of its soul. The sound raised goosebumps on Jake's arms despite the heat. In 20 years of being around animals on farms and ranches, he'd never heard anything quite like it. "What's wrong, boy?" Jake crouched down, trying to see what the dog was staring at so intently. That's when he noticed the skid marks. Fresh rubber burns scarred the highway. Leading from the center lane toward the right shoulder in a violent arc Jake's trained eye followed the marks, his stomach dropping as he realized what they meant. An accident. Recent. Maybe within the last hour or two. The dog suddenly moved, breaking its statue-like pose. But instead of running away or approaching Jake, it trotted purposefully toward the shoulder, stopped, and looked back at him. The message was unmistakable. Follow me. Jake's pulse quickened. Every instinct honed by years on the road screamed that something was very wrong here. He glanced back at his truck, sitting idle with its hazard lights flashing. The smart thing would be to call 911 and let the authorities handle whatever this was. But the dog barked once, sharp and insistent, then took several more steps toward the embankment that dropped off beyond the shoulder. All right, Jake muttered, standing up. I'm coming. As he followed the golden retriever toward the edge of the highway, his mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. The skid mark suggested a vehicle had gone off the road, but there was no visible wreckage, no smoke, no obvious signs of crash. Just those damning rubber burns and one desperate dog refusing to leave. The retriever reached the guardrail and squeezed through a gap where the metal had been bent outward. Jake's blood ran cold. Something had hit that rail hard enough to deform it, and recently he approached the edge cautiously and looked over. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat and his hands start to shake. If you're as gripped by this story as we are, please take a moment to comment below what you think Jake saw. And don't forget to subscribe. It helps us continue bringing you these incredible stories of loyalty and courage. 20 feet down the steep embankment, partially hidden by scrub brush in the angle of the slope, was a dark blue sedan. It had rolled at least once, maybe twice, coming to rest on its roof against a cluster of rocks. The windshield was completely shattered, glass glittering in the fading sunlight like scattered diamonds. One wheel was still slowly spinning, suggesting the crash had happened not long ago. But what froze Jake's blood wasn't the wrecked car itself. It was the small pink backpack visible through the rear window, and the child's car seat still strapped in place, hanging upside down. Oh, God, Jake breathed, his hand instinctively reaching for his phone. Oh, God, no. The golden retriever barked frantically from beside him, then began scrambling down the embankment, its paws sliding on loose gravel and dirt. Jake's mind snapped into focus, years of emergency training from his time in the National Guard flooding back. He dialed 911 with shaking fingers while carefully starting his own descent. 911, what's your emergency? This is Jake Morrison. I'm on Interstate 40, eastbound, about mile marker 237. There's been a vehicle accident. Car went over the embankment. I can see a child's car seat inside. Send in my location now. The dispatcher's voice became sharp and urgent. Sir, can you see any occupants? Are they conscious? Jake half slid, half climbed down the rocky slope. Phone pressed his ear, his other hand grabbing at bushes to slow his descent. The golden retriever had already reached the car and was pawing at the driver's side door, whining desperately. I'm getting to it now, Jake panted. The dog led me here. It was standing in the middle of the highway, refusing to move. Sir, please be careful. Don't move any victims unless there's immediate danger like fire or... Jake reached the car and immediately smelled it. Gasoline. A puddle was forming beneath the crumpled vehicle, spreading slowly across the dirt. There's a fuel leak, he interrupted, his voice tight. I'm getting them out. He dropped to his knees beside the inverted vehicle, his heart hammering. The golden retriever pressed against him, whining, its whole body trembling. Jake peered through the shattered driver's window. A woman, probably in her 30s, hung suspended by her seatbelt. Her face was turned away, blonde hair matted with blood. Jake couldn't tell if she was breathing, but what made his stomach drop to his feet was a small hand he could see reaching out from the back seat. Tiny fingers splayed against the inside of the window. There's a woman and a child, he reported to the dispatcher, trying to keep his voice steady. I need to get them out. The fuel leak is getting worse. Emergency services are en route. ETA 12 minutes. Sir, if you must move them. 12 minutes might be too long. Jake cut in, already assessing the situation. The driver's door was crushed against the ground. The passenger door was accessible, but bent. The back doors were his best option. He moved quickly to the rear passenger door, the one away from the worst of the damage. The golden retriever followed, pressing its nose against the window where the small hand was visible. The door was jammed. Jake braced his boot against the frame and pulled with everything he had. His muscles screamed, sweat pouring down his face despite the cooling evening air. The door groaned, then suddenly gave way with a metallic shriek. Inside, strapped into a car seat that was now upside down, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 4 years old, with blonde curls like her mother's and wide blue eyes that were glazed with shock. She was conscious but silent, staring at nothing. "Hey there, sweetheart," Jake said softly, his voice cracking. "My name's Jake. I'm going to get you out of here, okay?" The child didn't respond, didn't even seem to register his presence. Jake recognized the signs of shock. He worked quickly, his hands surprisingly steady, as he unclipped the car seat straps. The smell of gasoline was getting stronger, making his eyes water. The golden retriever pushed its head into the car, and suddenly the little girl's eyes focused. Her small hand reached out, fingers tangling in the dog's fur. "Bailey," she whispered her first word. Bailey came back. Jake's throat tightened. So the dog belonged to them. It must have been thrown from the car during the accident, and instead of running away, it had gone to the highway to get help. The intelligence and loyalty of that action was staggering. Carefully, Jake lifted the child from the seat, cradling her against his chest. She was so light, so fragile. He quickly checked her over for obvious injuries. No visible bleeding, no obviously broken bones, but that didn't mean she wasn't hurt internally. "You're okay now," he murmured. "You're safe." He carried her a safe distance from a vehicle and laid her gently on a patch of grass. The golden retriever immediately curled around her, licking her face, its tail wagging weakly. The little girl buried her face in the dog's fur, finally starting to cry soft, heartbroken sobs. Jake's jaw clenched. One safe. But the mother was still trapped in that car, with gasoline pooling beneath it. He ran back to the wreck, this time moving to the front. The driver's side was impossible, crushed against the earth. He moved to the passenger's side, dropped to his stomach, and peered in through the broken window. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" The woman's eyes fluttered. She was alive. Barely. My daughter," she managed to whisper, blood on her lips. "She's safe. Your dog saved her. Now I'm going to get you out." In the distance, Jake heard sirens, but they sounded far away, too far. The gasoline smell was overwhelming now, and he could hear a faint ticking sound from the engine. He had minutes at most. He reached in through the window, his hands searching for the seatbelt release. Jake's fingers fumbled with the seatbelt mechanism, slick with sweat and the woman's blood. She hung limp in the inverted driver's seat, her breathing shallow and ragged. Every second that ticked by felt like an eternity, and the acrid smell of gasoline grew stronger, burning his nostrils and making his eyes water. "Stay with me," he urged, finally finding the release button. "What's your name?" "Sarah," she breathed, barely audible. Is Emma really?" "Emma's safe. She's with your dog right now. Bailey, right? That's one hell of a smart dog you've got there." The seatbelt suddenly released, and Sarah's full weight dropped. Jake caught her as best he could through the window, but her position was awkward, her legs tangled in the crushed footwell. He could see her left leg was bent at an unnatural angle, definitely broken. "This is going to hurt," he warned. "But I've got to get you out of here." He repositioned himself, getting a better grip under her arms. The woman cried out in pain as he began to pull, but Jake couldn't afford to be gentle. That ticking sound from the engine was getting louder, and he swore he could see wisps of smoke starting to rise from the hood. Behind him, the golden retriever barked frantically. Jake glanced back to see the dog standing protectively over Emma, its eyes locked on him and Sarah, as if willing him to move faster. Come on," Jake muttered through gritted teeth, pulling harder. Sarah screamed as her broken leg dragged against the crumpled dashboard, and Jake's heart clenched, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. With a final heave, she came free. Jake immediately began dragging her away from the vehicle, his arms hooked under hers, moving as fast as he could backward up the slope. Rocks and thorns tore his back and legs, but he barely felt them. All his focus was on putting distance between them and that ticking time bomb of a car. He'd made it about 15 feet when he heard it. A soft whoosh, almost gentle, like someone lighting a gas stove. Then the heat hit him like a physical wall. No, no, no! Jake dropped and covered Sarah's body with his own as flames erupted from the car's engine compartment. The explosion he'd been dreading didn't come, not yet, but the fire was spreading fast, licking along the trail of spilled gasoline. The golden retriever barked louder, more urgently. Jake looked up to see the dog nudging Emma with its nose, trying to get the little girl to move further away. Smart animal. Too smart. Jake redoubled his efforts, his muscles screaming in protest as he dragged Sarah up the embankment. His boots slipped on loose gravel, and for a terrifying moment, they both started to slide back down toward the burning vehicle. He dug his heels in, found purchase, and heaved again. The sirens were closer now, their wailing cutting through the evening air. Red and blue lights began to flash at the top of the embankment, and Jake heard voices shouting. "Down here," he yelled. 2 victims. Vehicles on fire. Paramedics and firefighters appeared at the guardrail, and within seconds, 2 EMTs were scrambling down the slope toward him. They reached him just as his strength was finally giving out and took over, efficiently moving Sarah up to the road. Jake collapsed onto his back, chest heaving, his shirt soaked with sweat and blood that wasn't his. He watched as more first responders descended, one team going to Emma and the golden retriever, another pulling fire hoses to contain the blaze. A hand appeared in front of his face. "Come on, sir. Let's get you checked out." Jake let himself be pulled to his feet and guided up the embankment. At the top, the scene was controlled chaos. 2 ambulances, 3 fire trucks, and at least 4 police cars lined the shoulder, their lights painting the darkening sky in alternating colors. He found himself sitting on the back of an ambulance while a paramedic checked his vitals and cleaned the cuts on his arms. His eyes searched the chaos until he found Emma. She was in the back of the other ambulance, wrapped in a silver emergency blanket and clinging to Bailey. The golden retriever sat pressed against her, accepting the paramedic's examination of the girl while never moving from her side. "That dog's a hero," the paramedic treating Jake said, following his gaze. "Stood in traffic for over an hour, they're saying. Could have been killed 20 times over, but it wouldn't move. Just kept barking at passing cars until you stopped." Jake shook his head in amazement. "How's the mother?" The paramedic's expression turned serious. "Critical but stable. Broken leg, possible internal injuries, definite concussion. But she's alive, and that's because of you. Another few minutes and that fire." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Jake understood perfectly well what would have happened. A police officer approached, notebook in hand. "Mr. Morrison, I need to get your statement." For the next 20 minutes, Jake recounted everything. The dog in the road, the skid marks, the discovery of the crash, the rescue. As he talked, he kept watching Emma and Bailey. The little girl had started talking to the paramedics, her voice small but clear in the evening air. And through it all, Bailey never left her side, never stopped comforting her. "One more thing," the officer said, flipping his notebook closed. "The mother, Sarah Mitchell, she's been conscious long enough to tell us what happened. She swerved to avoid a deer, overcorrected, and lost control. The car flipped, went through the guardrail. She said Bailey was in the back seat with Emma, and when the car stopped rolling, the rear window was shattered. Bailey must have climbed out. And instead of running, it went for help." Jake finished quietly. The officer nodded. "Not just any help. It waited for someone who would stop, someone who would listen, someone like you." 3 weeks later, Jake Morrison found himself pulling his 18-wheeler into a parking lot he'd never expected to visit. The small suburban house with its neatly trimmed lawn and white picket fence looked like something out of a magazine, a far cry from the desolate highway where this story had begun. He'd called ahead, of course. Sarah Mitchell had reached out to the hospital, leaving him messages thanking him, begging to meet him in person. At first, Jake had resisted. He wasn't comfortable with being called a hero. He'd just done what anyone would do, he kept telling himself. But the messages kept coming, and finally he'd agreed. Now, Standing at the front door with a bag of dog treats in one hand and a bouquet of flowers in the other, he felt oddly nervous. Before he could knock, the door flew open. Mr. Morrison. Emma stood there, one leg in a cast decorated with colorful drawings, but her face bright with a smile that could have powered the whole neighborhood. Behind her, golden fur gleaming in the afternoon sun, stood Bailey. The dog's tail began wagging so hard its entire back end moved. Before Jake could react, Bailey bounded forward and put his paws on Jake's chest, licking his face enthusiastically. "Bailey, down." Sarah Mitchell appeared in the doorway, walking with a cane but looking remarkably well considering what she'd been through. "I'm so sorry. He remembers you." Jake laughed, scratching behind Bailey's ears. "It's okay. I'm pretty fond of this guy myself." Inside the house, over coffee and cookies that Emma proudly announced she'd helped make, the full story came out. Sarah explained that Bailey had been a rescue dog, adopted from a shelter 2 years ago. They'd been told he was smart, but this level of intelligence and loyalty had shocked everyone. "The police reconstructed what happened," Sarah said, her hand absently stroking Bailey's head as he lay beside her chair. "After the crash, Bailey climbed out through the broken window. They found his paw prints in the dirt, showing that he first circled the car, probably checking on us. Then he climbed up the embankment and went straight to the highway. Witnesses said he tried to stop several cars," Emma added, her small voice serious. "But everyone just honked and drove around him." Jake felt his throat tighten. "Until I came along." Sarah's eyes glistened with tears. "You didn't just stop, Mr. Morrison. You listened. You followed him. You risked your life to save mine and Emma's. We owe you everything." "No," Jake said firmly, looking down at Bailey. "You owe him everything. I was just a guy who was finally smart enough to pay attention." They talked for hours. Sarah shared that she'd been driving to her mother's house, taking back roads to avoid highway traffic. The deer had appeared, so suddenly she'd had no time to react properly. The doctors told her that if Jake had arrived even 10 minutes later, she would have died from internal bleeding. Emma showed Jake her cast, pointing out all the signatures from friends and family. "And look," she said excitedly, pointing to a large gold paw print. "That's Bailey's. The nurse helped me make it." As the afternoon wore on, Jake found himself relaxing, laughing at Emma's stories about Bailey's antics, marveling at how normal everything seemed. This family had stared death in the face and come to the other side, and now they were just living, moving forward, healing. Before he left, Sarah pulled him aside. "I heard you lost time on your delivery, that it cost you money." Jake waved her off. "That's not important. It is to me. You lost income saving our lives. Please let us—" "Mrs. Mitchell, Sarah," Jake interrupted gently. "I didn't do it for money. I did it because it was right. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "I got something better than money out of this." "What's that?" Jake looked through the doorway to where Emma was lying on the floor, hugging Bailey while the dog patiently endured her enthusiastic affection. "I got to remember why I became a driver in the first place. To be out there on the road, where you never know when you might be exactly where you need to be." As Jake walked back to his truck, Bailey followed him out, tail wagging. The dog sat at Jake's feet, looking up at him with those intelligent eyes. "You're something special, you know that?" Jake crouched down, accepting the wet nose that pressed into his palm. "You saved your family, boy. Not many dogs could do what you did." Bailey barked once, as if in agreement, then did something unexpected. He picked up a stick from the yard and dropped it at Jake's feet. Jake laughed and threw it. Bailey retrieved it, but instead of playing more, he carried the stick back to the house where Emma was watching from the door, then returned to Jake and sat at attention. Even now, Jake realized Bailey was watching over his family, making sure everyone was where they should be. The drive back to the highway was quiet. Jake found himself thinking about chance, about fate, about the strange way life works. If he'd been 5 minutes earlier or later, he would have missed seeing Bailey. If he decided his schedule was more important than one stubborn dog, Sarah and Emma wouldn't be alive. But more than that, he thought about loyalty, about a dog that climbed out of a wrecked car, injured and scared, and instead of running to safety, had gone to find help, a dog that had stood in traffic for over an hour, risking its own life, refusing to give up on the family it loved. As the sun set behind him and the highway stretched out ahead, Jake Morrison made a promise to himself. He would never ignore that instinct again. Never drive past something that felt wrong. Never assume someone else would handle it. Because sometimes the smallest acts of courage can save lives. Sometimes the loudest cry for help comes in silence. And sometimes the biggest heroes have 4 legs and a wagging tail. The story of Bailey, the golden retriever who refused to leave the highway, reminds us that heroism comes in many forms. It teaches us about loyalty that transcends species, about the importance of stopping to help even when it's inconvenient, and about the incredible intelligence and emotional depth of our animal companions. If this story moved you, please share it with everyone you know. Hit that like button. Leave a comment telling us about your own experiences with loyal pets, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel. Every subscription helps us continue sharing these incredible true stories of courage, compassion, and the unbreakable bonds between humans and animals. Remember, the next time you see an animal in distress, you might be witnessing the beginning of your own miracle story. Be the person who stops. Be the person who listens. Be like Jake Morrison. And never underestimate the power of a loyal heart. Thank you for reading. Please comment below with your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more amazing true stories.